But you cannot threaten a nuclear power. You cannot threaten its existence. This gives us confidence, and this is the basis of nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence is an integral part and a cornerstone of our national security as a whole.
After unveiling what Moscow describes as the world's most powerful missile system, Russia appeared to taunt the United States and President Donald Trump amid rising tensions over Ukraine and NATO. Following the latest Sarmat RS-28 missile developments, Russia's message to the West came at a particularly sensitive moment after Trump's widely scrutinized and politically difficult trip to China. As the Ukraine war continues to intensify, President Vladimir Putin is now appearing to flash Russia's so-called Doomsday missile at Europe as a warning against further escalation. Russia also appeared to send a direct signal to Washington, with officials stressing that the Sarmat missile system is capable of reaching targets virtually anywhere across the globe. Amid the intensifying conflict with Ukraine and worsening tensions with NATO, Russia issued another strong warning directed at Western nations over the risks of further confrontation. Referring to the recent test and deployment plans for the Sarmat RS-28 missile system, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov warned that Russia's enemies should not underestimate Moscow's nuclear deterrence capabilities. The warning from the Kremlin came shortly after Ukraine reportedly launched another attack targeting Moscow during the night of May 16th to 17th, escalating fears of deeper strikes inside Russia. According to reports cited by the Kyiv Independent, Russia claimed that at least 3 people were killed and multiple buildings were damaged during the latest wave of attacks around Moscow. Following the attacks, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appeared to hint that Kyiv may continue or even expand long-range strike operations deeper into Russian territory. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated on May 17 that Russia's very existence could never be threatened, while defending the country's nuclear posture and strategic missile expansion.
I think people inevitably have a question. Well, we have these powerful bombs, so what? It turns out that you can both nibble at and bite a nuclear power. But you cannot threaten a nuclear power. You cannot threaten its existence. This gives us confidence, and this is the basis of nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence is an integral part and a cornerstone of our national security as a whole.
This is about threatening the country's existence, right?
Sure.
Everyone is wondering who could now represent the interests of the European Union. The European Commission Vice President, Kaja Kallas, is practically putting forward her candidacy. Can we consider Kaja Kallas as a candidate?
Well, it's not in Kaja Kallas's best interests to be a negotiator. It won't be easy for her. If you remember, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that it could be anyone who hasn't had a chance to say too many bad things yet.
Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel didn't seem to have time to talk a lot, but she had time to do a lot of bad things. Yet, she's also being considered.
Listen, active discussions on this topic is a very positive shift. The fact that people are saying, we need to give it some thought. At some point we'll have to talk to the Russians. That is good. It meets our interests. It wasn't us who initiated the breakdown of relations to zero, but we would be interested in trying to rebuild them. You know, these discussions are just up in the air, but Putin is as close to them, European leaders, as a phone receiver. Remember, over the past few years, French President Emmanuel Macron kept saying that he would call Putin, but never actually picked up the phone. Let's hope that a practical approach will prevail after all, and that this will indeed come to some fruition. Russia will be ready for this.
It turns out that you can be driving along and spot Putin in the next lane, doesn't it?
Well, in theory, yes.
One Russian Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile could destroy an entire nation, Russian military analyst Igor Korochenko said in his latest assessment. He claimed that a single Sarmat, armed with more than 10 individually guided nuclear warheads, could theoretically wipe out countries such as France or the United Kingdom. The analyst warned that the missile could be used if Russia judged that its national security or strategic stability was seriously threatened. Korochenko added that the Sarmat can strike targets via both the North and South Poles, complicating early warning and missile defense planning. His remarks were made as he spoke to Russian state media outlet Sputnik, which published his comments on the missile's capabilities. Notably, The Sarmat is designed as a heavy intercontinental ballistic missile specifically for Russia's strategic nuclear forces. Earlier this week, Russia's defense ministry released video showing a test launch of a Sarmat missile from a silo-based site. The official footage showed the initial phases of the intercontinental ballistic missile launch, from ignition to early ascent. Russian President Vladimir Putin received a formal report on the test from senior missile force commanders overseeing the launch. According to Russian reports, Putin then reviewed detailed information about the Sarmat test during a video conference with top defense officials. Putin said that Russia has greatly modernized its nuclear deterrent since the early 2000s, citing new systems introduced over the past 2 decades. He also described the Sarmat as the most powerful missile system currently in the world, highlighting its payload and range. The Russian president claimed that the missile's total warhead power exceeds comparable Western strategic systems by around 4 times.
Work on improving deterrent forces resumed in Russia and has not stopped since the early 2000s. Back then we had no time for this. To put it bluntly, Russia was going through a very difficult period in its history. But after the United States withdrew from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002, we were forced to, I want to emphasize this, we were forced to think about ensuring our strategic security in the new reality and the need to maintain a strategic balance of forces, parity. That is precisely why, I would like to emphasize this once again, Russia has begun work on the development of advanced systems that have no equivalent anywhere in the world and are guaranteed to overcome both existing and future missile defense systems. We are systematically implementing the Nuclear Forces Development Program established in response to this. In 2004, we began work on the intercontinental Avangard missile system. Since 2019, it has been on combat duty. Then we developed the medium-range air-launched Kinshal Hypersonic missile, which has been on duty since 2017. It is already being used during the special military operation, but work on its improvement continues, including on accuracy in non-nuclear equipment. Since 2025, the medium-range ground-based Oreshnik missile system has been on combat duty, which can also be equipped with nuclear warheads. We are finishing work on 2 systems with small nuclear propulsion systems, the unique unmanned underwater Poseidon vehicle and the unique global-range Buvesnik cruise missile. Now let's speak about Sarmat Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. We started working on it in 2011. In 2018, these works and the advantages of new prospective missile systems, including Sarmat, were publicly announced. Let me remind you what was discussed then and the advantages of our newest system. Firstly, it is the most powerful missile system in the world, not inferior in power to the Soviet-developed Voyvoda missile system in service with us. The total power of the warhead is more than 4 times the power of any most powerful existing Western counterpart. Secondly, and this is most crucial, the missile can travel not only along a ballistic, but also a suborbital trajectory, which allows it to exceed its range of over 35,000 kilometers, with simultaneously doubled accuracy characteristics and with the capability to overcome all existing and future missile defense systems. By the end of this year, Sarmat will be put on combat duty. Congratulations to the Defense Ministry, all participants, researchers, engineers, defense industrial complex production organizers, prime contractors on this major event and infallible success. Thank you for your work in strengthening Russia's defense capabilities.
Amid intensifying attacks in the Russia-Ukraine war, President Volodymyr Zelensky made a major claim about Moscow's next possible military move. Zelensky alleged that Russia is trying to pull Belarus deeper into the Ukraine conflict, according to Reuters. The Ukrainian leader also claimed Moscow is weighing plans to attack northern Ukraine or even a NATO country from Belarusian territory. Volodymyr Zelensky said, and I quote, "We continue to document Russia's attempts to draw Belarus deeper into the war against Ukraine." Ukraine knew of additional contacts between Russia and Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko to persuade him to join new Russian aggressive operations. Russia is considering plans for operations to the south and north of Belarusian territory, either against the Chernihiv-Kiev direction in Ukraine or against one of the NATO countries directly from the territory of Belarus. Unquote. Zelensky said Kiev is closely monitoring what he described as Moscow's attempts to drag Belarus deeper into the war. According to Zelensky, intelligence reports point to fresh contacts between Russia and Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. The Ukrainian leader alleged that Moscow is trying to persuade Minsk to join new aggressive military operations. Belarus borders NATO members Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia, raising fresh concerns over regional security. Neither Moscow nor Minsk immediately responded to Zelensky's claims about possible military plans. Belarus had earlier allowed Russian forces to use its territory during the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Minsk has also agreed to host Russian tactical nuclear weapons and Oreshnik missile systems on its soil. Zelensky said Ukraine has already instructed its defense forces to strengthen northern security measures. Kiev is now preparing response plans for the Chernihiv and Kiev regions in case of any future attack.